I know as a teenager, and I know when I was a young woman sort of starting out, I was always so self-conscious that people would be judging me and looking at me, and I'd play back over in my head things I said in meetings. Nobody cares, nobody notices. So give yourself a break from the voice in the head as well.
I think that's so important for teenagers about curiosity and adaptability and resilience, because right now in like the stage of life that all my listeners are at, we're focused on exams, and exams kind of seem like the be all end all. But actually, when you get to the workplace, it's not about that at all. It's about who's putting their hand up, who's putting themselves out there, and you don't have to be the smartest in the room to do that. Hi, I'm Sia Kantaria, and welcome back to Female Founder Stories, Women at the Top Told by a Teen. You and I are going behind the scenes of entrepreneurship, hearing from incredible women about the grit, the setbacks, and the breakthroughs it takes to build something real, told in a way that makes you think, I could do that too. Today's guest broke one of the biggest glass ceilings in British business. Dame Alison Rose spent over 30 years at NatWest Group, starting as a graduate trainee and going on to become the first woman ever to lead one of the UK's major banks. She's known for bringing purpose and empathy into finance, championing sustainability and inclusion, and leading the Rose Review, a project that's helped thousands more women grow and start their businesses. So Alison, welcome to Female Founder Stories. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
So can we go back right to the beginning of your journey? What drew you to banking in the first place, and what mindsets and choices helped you grow into a leader?
Yeah, so when I joined banking, I didn't it really came from the perspective of what I wanted out of a career. So I didn't have this burning ambition when I was younger to become a banker. So what I was looking for when I was graduating from university was I knew what I wanted. I wanted to work internationally. I wanted to work with bright people, smart people. I wanted somewhere where I could learn and develop. And I definitely wanted something in business, so that really fascinated me. And so the graduate training programs that investment banks offer gave me, I think, that opportunity. So I thought I'll come in, I'll train for 3 years and learn lots of different things, because it's really hard from banking to figure out what it is all about. So to try all that, and I'll get good grounding, good training, good skills, and then I'll see what I can do. So I only ever thought a sort of 3-year horizon. I think to your second point, how did I really develop my leadership skills? There was definitely a point in my career when I came into banking. It was a very, very male dominated. It's still male dominated, but it was a very male dominated environment, and there were no female role models. And so when I was, there was a certain point early on in my career when I realized, actually, I made a choice. The only way I'm going to get on, and the only way I want to get on, is by being myself. So I can see how other people do it. I've got no female role models, but the only way I can be successful is to be myself. And that self-belief, confidence, resilience, and I guess faith in your ability to be successful and deliver, that to me was a real decision point. And that decision point has really held me right the way through my career, to the point where I've said, if I can't do it this way, then this might not be the right organization for me. And culture is very important, and team is very important. And it's all about outcomes. How you get to the outcomes, you define yourself. You don't have to follow someone else. So effectively be the best version of yourself.
I think that's really golden advice, and I have a few follow-up questions on that. So I'm currently reading Invisible Women, and I know that there are, not just with data, but even in the workplace, there are many kind of attributes that if a woman said something, she would be considered as coming off as opinionated, whereas if a man said it, he would come off as confident. So how do you think that as kind of society grows, and maybe for like my generation and to all my listeners, how do you think that we can kind of overcome these stereotypes and these things that really put women down, which is often unconscious in society and it's embedded into society so much?
I think the most important thing is to remember that you're not the problem. So women don't need to fix themselves. Talent shows up in lots of different ways, and I certainly have gone, had that in my career, where drive and motivation and ambition are seen as really good things in young guys, and viewed as negatively. You're sort of edgy as a woman. And one of the things that I call it the gravitas trap. I've seen, as I was going through my career and then observing other women coming through their career and how people were assessed, there was always a question about women of, oh, but does she have the gravitas? Whereas the guy, it was a given. The fundamental thing to remember is you're not the problem. You don't need to fix yourself. This is a perception point and how talent shows up. And now, thankfully, there's a greater degree of understanding around how different talent shows up. Great leaders want really diverse teams because it means you get the best talent around the table. You get diversity of thought, which is the biggest competitive advantage a business can ever have, whether it's small or large. So I think the trick is to, be the best version of yourself. Be aware of the environment you're in and how people show up, and you have to be proactive and you have to be able to speak up. But that's where mentoring groups, sort of leadership groups, those types of things help. So be the best version of yourself. If you're coming across that, find someone who can help you talk to someone. But ambition is a great thing. Never apologize for being ambitious. That is a feminine as well as masculine attribute. And never apologize for the way in which you show up with your talent. But the most important thing is you've got to remember to speak up for yourself. Again, another good learning point for me was I thought the work would speak for itself. And particularly if you're in a big organization, there are lots of brilliant people and lots of people doing great work. There are lots of people who are just good self promoters. You've got to be your own champion as well. And those are things sometimes we need to practice more.
I think that's such golden advice, especially I've heard a lot about doing the work silently in the background. So now one of the best things that you are known for is the Rose Review. And for listeners who might not know what that is, can you explain what it's set out to do and also why supporting female entrepreneurs is so important to you?
The Rose Review was a very detailed study that I did with the Treasury and the UK government into female entrepreneurship. And the genesis of it was very much I'd set up in my role as running the commercial and SME business for NatWest. I'd seen that for entrepreneurs, there was a lack of support and a lack of help to help them to fulfill their dreams. And entrepreneurs are doing the really hard stuff. They're creating jobs, creating opportunities, creating income for the economy. And there was a lack of support for female entrepreneurs. So I undertook a piece of research that was very data driven, looked at the global best practice and said, what is the problem and what are practical steps that we can take to improve this? What the data showed us was that if women could start and scale businesses at the same rate as men, and there were proven studies in leading countries like Canada, Australia, Amsterdam, and the US where interventions were put in place, that was entirely feasible. It could add 250 billion to the UK economy. There was no lack of female entrepreneurs. It was just showing that, only 1% of venture capital funding was going to female-led businesses. So you had this huge demand, huge untapped potential, and it just wasn't getting the right support and infrastructure to allow those businesses to thrive. So the report identified the opportunity for the UK economy, 250 billion. It also identified why this was a problem and some practical steps in terms of improving those statistics so that we could really, those who could help could get in and help female entrepreneurs. Now, the reason it's so important, firstly, at a macro level, entrepreneurs really are the lifeblood of a thriving economy. Actually, interestingly, only in the last month or so, there's been Nobel Prizes awarded to economists who have proven that the way to drive productivity, the only way to improve productivity in economy is through innovation. Now, we all know that, but now they've proven it and been recognized for it. In the UK, we are a SME, small, medium-sized business economy. 60% of the turnover of the country comes from small businesses. 40 to 50% of people are employed by small businesses. You need to have a thriving entrepreneurial community, startup businesses starting up, failing, starting again, scaling, growing. because what they do is they create jobs, they create revenue, they pay taxes, and they drive a thriving economy. So if you want to have a thriving, growing economy, you need to have a vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem and community. And in order to, female entrepreneurs are a huge part of that. They're not getting the right level of support. If we can get that in place, it's a 250 billion contribution to the economy.
That's really fascinating. Do you think that some of that is because often women's products or female entrepreneurs have built products for women? And I've interviewed quite a few women who've built products for women, and because there aren't that many like angel investors or people at that level who are women, they aren't getting as much investment because the men just can't see the kind of the value of that product because they don't have period pains, or they don't have to deal with pads instead of period pants and all those kind of things.
Yeah, there's definitely part of that, but it's broader than that because you have, there are amazing female entrepreneurs setting up life science companies and tech companies and building companies as well as products for women. And part of the problem is when you look around, the people who are holding the money, the venture capital money, or there's a couple of problems. In the UK, we have a much thinner pool of capital. And secondly, the majority of the people making the decisions, the investment managers, private equity, it's a very male dominated environment. I talked about banking being male dominated, it's improved significantly, but the majority of VCs don't even have a woman on their investment committee. And, I would hear through our research some horror stories of, they bring the receptionist in from the desk just to have a woman sitting there. So there is a lack of understanding, a lack of women sitting there. And so a lack of diversity of thought and a bit of groupthink. If everyone is from, and this is really the why the business case for diversity is so important. If you have everyone who is from the same gender, the same background, the same schools, the same point of view, you're going to get groupthink. You're going to get one perspective. If you have people from, if you have women in there, if you have people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different schools, different ethnicities, different diversity, you're going to approach a problem with your perspective. And that is enormously valuable because that allows you to have diversity of thought. So it's a combination of you haven't got people around the table who are thinking about it. You've also got, it's really hard for women to get into those networks because it's, where to go to get help. And that's one of the barriers and challenges we identified in the Rose review as well.
I mean, what you're saying about teamwork is really interesting. And also, I think it's a very interesting example of your leadership because you can see everybody's strengths, and everyone's different perspectives brings those strengths and brings those different views and opinions. And I guess that's exactly what you need with entrepreneurship, even when you're looking at different consumers, or you do have to work with different people, whether that's someone who's investing or you're managing a team. So now many teenagers they don't know, they feel like they might not have the confidence yet, but they have a drive or ambition to make change. And this is what the change we're talking about now is quite large scale change. It's like societal change. But how do you think that as young women and teenagers, both men and women, can come into the workplace giving our different perspectives and trying to find environments which really empower women and not constrain them?
So I think a couple of things. Right now, the world is changing really rapidly. We're in a period of massive change, and that pace of change is only going to get faster and faster and faster. So whether it's the geopolitical environment, whether it's the economic environment, whether it's the technology changes that we're seeing coming, so nobody can say with any confidence what the answer is. And this is one of the things I always say to, and I was very open about as a CEO. I don't know what the world will look like in 2 to 3 years. And so, and anyone who tells you they do is lying. So, that isn't the case. So what's much more important now and is really critical is curiosity, adaptability. So really around the mindset, resilience, and attitude and keeping an open mind and being proactive. Those are skills that I think anyone coming into the workplace should have, because I think that is, and the willingness to try things and fail and take risk, because that's the only way that you learn and you advance, particularly in a world that's changing so much. What's so important when you join an organization or whatever route that you go, you don't need to have the answer. And there isn't anything such as the perfect job. But what's really important is the culture that you're going into. Are you going into an environment that is going to embrace that curiosity, that adaptability, that is going to give you an ability to have a voice? One of the thing, and you should never be shy about giving your opinion. The other thing I would say is around confidence. When I started out, I wouldn't say boo to a goose. I was quite shy. I found public speaking really difficult, and for a long time I used to blush and would find it really difficult. The thing is, the things you're not very good at, practice, 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 practice. That's the thing. Just try it, practice, learn, and I can always say that whenever I sat around the table and I was worried about asking a question because I think I looked stupid, 9 times out of 10, someone would A, wouldn't notice that I was nervous, and B, loads of people come up to me after and say, "Oh, I'm glad you asked that question because I didn't know that either." So a lot of people fake it. So that's the thing. Never assume the person who stands up and is the most confident isn't inside going, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." So, those are things. One of the things I did when I was at NatWest is I established something called the junior management team. And what we did was, the most junior people in the organization, we would get them to sit as a board, and we would share our board papers with them. And I would share all our communications with them because, frankly, the stuff I wrote, they would read it and go, it's gobbledygook. It doesn't speak to, it's indecipherable. It's corporate speak, whatever. Our perspective would be, so go to an organization that values your point of view. Take risk, volunteer to do things. Yeah, let me try this. Can I try this? Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. And what's going to be really important is that curious mindset, that adaptability, that willingness to take risk. And the stuff you're worried about, just practice. Nobody's good at public speaking. Nobody likes it. Nobody has ironclad confidence. They just fake it. So just, don't worry about it. And also, I know as a teenager, and I know when I was a young woman sort of starting out, I was always so self-conscious that people would be judging me and looking at me, and I'd play back over in my head things I said in meetings. Nobody cares, nobody notices. So kind of, give yourself a break from the voice in the head as well.
I think that's so important for teenagers, especially everything that you just said, especially about curiosity and adaptability and resilience, because right now in like the stage of life that all my listeners are at, we're focused on exams, and exams kind of seem like the be all end all. It decides what university we're going to. But actually, when you get to the workplace, it's not about that at all. It's about who's putting their hand up, who's putting themselves out there. And you don't have to be the smartest in the room to do that, and to just give a new perspective and to just try out things. So I think that should really be implemented in more schools, I think, because it's not as encouraged as much.
Yeah, it's so important.
So you've achieved so much in your career, but what does success really mean for you, not just in your work life, but also your extended personal life?
So I'm a very, very outcome driven person. So success for me in the workplace is that you have, the team wins. It's all about the team. Any business that you're in, it's always about the team. So for me, success was always about, we created the right culture, a high performing culture, and a great team, where people could develop and advance. My first job is always to hire my successor, so that that you can progress. And from a work perspective, in any job that I've taken as I've progressed, it was always, the ambition was always to leave the job in a better shape than you took it over, so you could hand it on. And I think that's really important. You are, you have a certain period of time in those roles, so learn a lot, and hand it over in a better place, and make sure you've trained a generation behind you to continue and do a good job. I think the second for me is purpose, which was something I built in. no business has the right to exist. So your relevance is really important. So you have to look at what value you're adding. When it's a business like mine, it was value to the shareholders, but also value to the customers, to the communities and colleagues. And as long as I could balance that, that was success for me. From a personal level, it's always about making sure I'm always learning something. So, I have an innate curiosity about things. So I want to learn, I want to develop. I don't know the answer to everything. So constantly challenging myself and learning and developing and finding out new things, that's a big kind of part of my personal motivation. So always developing. And then at a very personal level, it was about having a great family, having happy children, and supporting them. So keeping all of that in balance. One thing should never dominate everything. So that was really that's what success looks like to me, but it will be different for everyone.
Yeah, I asked that question actually on to every single guest on the podcast because I think it's so interesting to hear how success is so different for everybody, and it has. There's no single person who's defined success in the same way. Through this conversation, I've learnt so much, and you've really showed me what qualities a leader should have. I think it's so incredible the way that you kind of embody this we before me, the way that you say everything is for the community or it's for my team. It's not, it's a very collaborative environment, it feels like. And I think that's one of the most incredible qualities of a leader. And you're empowering women, you've done so much. And through this conversation, I've learned to be curious, to really put myself out there. And I'm sure all my listeners feel the same way. So thank you so much for your time. And to everyone listening, see you next time.